Tom Collins from the Arizona Clean Elections Commission. We certainly have heard kind of two sides of the equation, so we're kind of anxious to hear what's been going on in Arizona.
Okay.
And how effective your organization is.
Okay. I'll try to answer those questions. Thanks, Ellie, and thank you all for coming. David and Lori, thanks for letting me have a chance to listen to your presentations. You know, I just wanted to, can you all hear me?
Yes.
You know, I think that, you know, a lot of what's been said before, you know, is really does lay out a lot of the legal underpinnings of real debates that are really happening. And then those debates don't, of course, happen in a vacuum. You know, and the reality is that if your top line concern is money in politics, you know, we do live in a state where, you know, we had a more money spent in the primary, I think, than you know, what some people describe as a shocking amount of money. The Cronkite News Service had a story this week featuring Bruce Merrill, who's a longtime retired now political science professor at ASU, who called the $43.5 million that were spent in the primary, you know, a shocking amount of money. And that is the reality. That is a consequence of the two sides of the debate that you've heard laid out for you. But it's also a consequence of policy decisions that the legislature has made. And you know, and the Clean Elections Commission fits within that policy universe. And so I want to step back a second and talk a little bit about what Clean Elections is, and then talk a little bit about where we are in Arizona. So, Clean Elections is a measure that was passed by the voters in 1998. And if you read the act, which anybody can, it's ARS 16940 is where it starts. If you go to azledge.gov. But we've actually an advertisement that actually we broadcast that actually tells you where people reading the act. Have you ever seen this ad that says, you know, we the people of Arizona declare our intent to have a clean election system, and it goes through what the principles of the act are. It's literally people reading the act that was passed. And what you see right there in the very beginning of the act are two principles that are really, I think, important and underpin the Clean Elections Commission, the Clean Elections Act, what I get to do on a daily basis. And that is anti-corruption and participation. And doing that in a way that promotes free speech under the Arizona and U.S. Constitution. That is directly what the people voted for. That was their intent. That's what they wanted. And to do that, when you look at Clean Elections looks across issues, and it looks at a lot of the same issues that the League of Women Voters looks at. In fact, the League of Women Voters, it was actually, while we were sitting there reviewing our publicity pamphlet from 1998, and there's a supporting letter from the then president of the League of Women Voters. And the League was involved in putting Clean Elections on the ballot and has been active with Clean Elections for, you know, the last 15 years that we've been around. And so what the Clean Elections Act does is three really big principal things. Number one, it sets up a public financing program, which we can talk about in more detail in a little bit. But that public financing program breaks the link between dollars and political favors that gives rise to corruption and the appearance of corruption. Because what it says is, if you forego those private contributions from political committees and instead gather small nominal contributions from people in your constituency, there will be funding for your election. Okay? So there is a breaking of the link between dollars and political favors. That is real anti-corruption. It also provides the opportunity for folks to run who might not otherwise be able to. So that increases participation and also engages voters. And this will be something you'll see through the qualifying process, because candidates who want to run for Clean Elections public financing have to go out to their constituents and show that support. The next thing that we provide for is nonpartisan campaign finance enforcement. And we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about this, but the Clean Elections Act was a clean election system. It was not a public financing system. It is a clean election system. It's a comprehensive system that says For state and legislative candidates for independent expenditures at the state level, the Clean Elections Commission is going to have the authority to enforce campaign finance limits and disclosure requirements. Why is it so important to have those enforced? Well, because in Arizona and a lot of other states, those are enforced by partisan elected officials. In our case, whether we love them or love, and I know Prescott, they do, Ken Bennett, Secretary of State, but he's still a partisan elected official, as is the Attorney General's office. The Clean Elections Commission is a 5-member commission with multi-partisan, mandated, geographically diverse, appointed by Republicans and Republican and Democratic officials with independent enforcement authority. And that's important. If you want a system that promotes public confidence and attacks corruption, you got to take as much as you can politics out. And having a commission that's appointed and has independent enforcement authority is critical to that. So again, it's a clean election system. And then the third thing that we do, and this is really, again, very important for participation in voter and public education. So what that means is you're going to have a system in place that goes out and provides voters information about candidates and about how to participate in the process. So we do that in a couple of different ways. We have our candidate statement pamphlet, which allows any candidates, whether they take public financing or not, to provide a direct statement to voters. And we do debates. We sponsor debates, which again, all candidates are invited to, and that you can come to live or you can see on our website. So, and then on top of that, we provide additional campaign finance reporting. So what we're providing to the public on the voter education piece is at every step of the process, first you're starting with the possibility of public financing, candidate statement pamphlet, debates, and campaign finance reports. At every step, Clean Elections is saying to voters, here's more information for you. You don't have to let an outside group intermediate between you and the candidate. The candidate's going to have an opportunity to speak directly to you in their own voice, whether you like it or not. And I'm not saying you have to agree with what's in the candidate statement pamphlet, but you do know the candidate put their name on it as what they think. And likewise, the debates. Bring people in front of the public. On statewide, we do it on television. Locally, we do it in rooms like this. And we always provide it on the web. And then campaign finance enforcement, campaign finance reports that allow you to see, at the very least, what the volume of spending is in races. And we hope in the future more better ideas on how that funding is being done. So, that's what it means when we say there's a clean election system. It's a comprehensive approach to all of the issues that we talk about. We talk about voter engagement, we talk about corruption, and we talk about what we're going to have as a democratic system. So I just want to kind of put that framework in front of you. And the other thing I want to just mention real quickly, it's critical to all this stuff. What the engine that makes this go, and the Arizona Supreme Court has said this, is we have an independent funding stream that does not come through the legislative appropriation process. So if you get a traffic ticket in Arizona, or if you pay a fine to Clean Elections, or if you give a $5 fine contribution, then you're funding Clean Elections. If you haven't done any of those things, you're not funding Clean Elections, but the point is, it's an independent funding stream that allows the commission to do enforcement in a way that is not colored ever by concern about the legislature cutting that appropriation, which again, in Arizona and other states, if you give that responsibility to an elected partisan official without independent funding, what you are doing is setting that person up to have to deal with the fact that if they want to go after the appropriations chairman, let's say, for a campaign finance violation, I'm not saying in Arizona, I'm just saying in general, come January, they've got to face up to the fact that this is the same person that controls their budget. So again, you have to think clean election system. What would a system look like? It would be a system that had independent funding, independent oversight, and broke the link between dollars and political favors. And we do all those things. We do them in a legal environment that we've now heard is tremendously challenging. And it's challenging for a couple of different reasons. I mean, one is, you're right, Justice Kennedy wrote the Citizens United decision, but it's challenging for one reason and one reason alone. And that is because Sandra Day O'Connor retired, William Rehnquist died, and John Roberts and Samuel Alito were appointed. In 2006, the entire world of campaign finance law changed. It didn't happen in Citizens United. Although Citizens United is sort of the culmination of one of these things. In 2006, for the first time, the U.S. Supreme Court held first time modern, first shift since the DICRA, the Campaign Act that David mentioned, was affirmed. The court said that a campaign finance law was unconstitutional because they said that the campaign finance, the campaign contribution limits in Vermont were too low. And then we're off to the races. And that's really what happened. That is a reality. And that is the reality of our constitutional system is the Supreme Court decides what the law is. That's what we live with. You don't have to agree with it, but I work for a state agency, we abide by the rule of law. The rule of law says the Supreme Court says what the law is. That's just the fact, that's just the beginning and end of it. We've already heard how you might change that or not change that, but that's where we exist now. So, what does that mean as a practical matter? It does mean that if you want to have limits on corporate spending in Arizona, or anywhere, you can't have it. Okay? That's what Citizens United says. But Citizens United, David mentioned this, Citizens United says one of the things that's crucial to the conversation we're having now and really gets back to where we are in Arizona today. It said that disclosure issues were left intact. What does that mean? What disclosure issues being left intact means is that corporations have the right to speak, but we have a right to know as a people, if we have policies in place to do it, who is spending money on political campaigns. And Justice Kennedy was very clear about this, that in the marketplace of ideas, evaluating who is speaking includes understanding who's funding that speech. So, if I could, just let's think about why that's so important in the context of an election. If you've got a bunch of 30-second ads that say so-and-so's a bad guy, that's great. That's fine. What that doesn't tell you is why the folks who wanted so-and-so a bad guy, what they want out of so-and-so. What's the policy going to be? Whose interests are being served? And that's something that Justice Kennedy emphasized, that we can know and that we can have policies in place to ensure that we find out, and that's part of democracy. And I got to tell you, you're going to hear probably, if you pay attention to all of you, these issues, you'll hear, and if you read the paper, you hear a lot of talk about what anonymous speech is and the fact that we need to be able to protect anonymous speech. The founders had anonymous speech, but I want to tell you something to just bear in mind when we talk about anonymous speech. Two things, really. Number one, obviously, if you don't have to disclose anything, and you have an alternate system that says you do have to disclose things, you're going to use the one that doesn't let you have you disclose things, right? We can all do that, right? But it's not anonymous to the folks who are putting together the campaigns. And that's the point. It's anonymous to you and me. It's anonymous to the general public. But we have no way of knowing if it's anonymous to the insiders who are putting together these campaigns. And that's what it means. When we talk about dark money, you hear this word thrown around. What we're really talking about is if you don't know who the donors are, you don't know what their interests are, and you don't know what the influence is. And that's why that's so important. So, where we are in Arizona, a couple of issues. I think that on the disclosure front, we have a law that was passed in 2010 that has made it, I think, inarguably more likely the dollars will be spent by corporations who are not disclosing their donors. That was passed by the legislature. It was passed unanimously, virtually unanimously, maybe even generally unanimously. And that was a policy choice that came after Citizens United. It was not required by Citizens United. The policy the legislature has in place now wasn't required by Citizens United. But it's a choice that was made, and how you can change that over time depends upon how active folks are really getting into the nitty-gritty on the legislative front. or if somebody comes along with another initiative like clean elections. The other issue you've seen is they've increased the contribution limits that apply to all candidates around the state, the legislative and state legislative candidates. And in that increase, so a tenfold increase in contribution limits, has people are now going to, I think you'll see in the next little bit, people will claim that as a result of that, and the fact that there was no change to there's been no adjustment to the public financing program after the matching funds decision that David discussed. Will people run with clean elections financing or not? Because there's so much more money available to candidates who raise money. And frankly, there will be a push, I think, in the next legislative session to eliminate all of the campaign finance limits that exist in Arizona. If you doubt me, if you read the Republic. Anybody? Okay, read Bob Robb. Just read Bob Robb. If you want to know what's going to happen in campaign finance come January, read Bob Robb's column. That is my suggestion to you. So Bob has a column recently where he talked about the fact we should get rid of all the campaign finance limits now because he doesn't see the value of them. But again, the value of them is the idea that I think is commonsensical to everybody, that you put politicians and money in the same room and think nothing bad's going to happen. I just think that's when we talk about naive. That's what we mean. So, we think about, we're still dealing with the fact that after the matching funds decision, and David kind of went over that, we haven't, adjusted the amount of money that participating candidates are getting. In fact, when the mechanism for releasing that money was found unconstitutional, the amount of money was never in question. It was the mechanism for releasing it. And of course, the legislature's reaction to that being struck down was to eliminate the funds. So candidates right now, people say clean elections isn't effective. Candidates right now in clean elections are getting 1/3 of the amount of money they should have gotten as it was passed. 1/3. And that's a legislative decision to when the mechanism was unconstitutional, rather than allowing the remaining grant to come out, they just got rid of it, which is sort of like your spigot is broken, so let's tear out the plumbing. And that's where we are. That's reality. That was a legislative choice. Finally, I want to talk about voter education, where we are with that, because I think it's really important. And I guess we have questions about the enforcement stuff, but this is really important, and I can't emphasize this enough. We have worked, the commission over the course of the last year, 2 years, has worked very hard to make sure that we're identifying how folks understand participation in Arizona elections. And this is a side point to the money and politics point, but it's really important because it's part of what understanding what a system, a clean election system is. And we've worked with the counties around the state. We've worked with Yavapai County. We have a great relationship with Yavapai County. We've worked with Maricopa County, Pima County, Apache County, to ensure that our voter education efforts are, coordinated with them, are hitting on issues that voters are telling election administrators they want to know about. And we're building on that. So in this year, for example, we made a specific effort to talk about independents' ability to vote in state primary elections. The numbers aren't all in yet, but it looks like there will have been an increase in very low participation in primaries by independents. But we also know that when independents participate, for example, through the early voting system, that they get those ballots back. They're much more likely to get their ballots back if they ask for them than folks who just get them because they're on party rolls, which is interesting, right? But the point is that we've heard from the counties, and what we are found in our independent research is that independents don't know they can vote. So we've been working on that this year. I think we'll see a little increase this year, and that's something that's going to be ongoing. Getting folks, especially in those counties that have a lot of people on the early voting list who may not get their ballots back, getting those back, something we coordinate with counties on so we can expedite. This is less an issue in Yavapai necessarily, but in Maricopa, some of the Pima, ensuring that we get the results back more quickly. And then helping folks understand how this all integrates, that it's them, it's up to voters at the end of the day to put aside the intermediaries, to go to the candidate statement pamphlet, to go to the Secretary of State's website where campaign finance reports are, to go to the debates, to take advantage of that information and make their own decision about how they vote. You know, we have a public service announcement out right now where a guy goes through his day and he's hearing all this noise about the election, and it's just all, you know, in his face, and he just doesn't want to deal with it. And then he gets to when we get to the polling place, you know, you see a person who's consulted our candidate statement pamphlet, and the sort of noise drops away. And we say there, you know, that really when you get in the voting booth, the only voice in your head should be yours. And that's what we're talking about, clean elections. Direct interaction between voters and folks who are running for office, breaking the link between dollars and political favors, promoting participation and promoting free speech. That's what clean elections is, and that's what a clean election system does. So that's where we are. You know, we think it's successful. We think it provides so much more to the public than folks who don't like it say it does. And so, but it's our job and my job to try to help explain to folks that it is a comprehensive program, that is something that touches voters every day in ways you may not realize, and that it's an important and crucial tool as a backstop to ensure that we have the democracy that the voters in Arizona asked for back in 1998 when they passed this initiative.